Hello and welcome to another episode of the Construction Corner podcast. I'm Dylan. I'm your host, joined by my blue collar badass. In this episode, Matt and I dive into some kind of core emotions, some core needs, some communication, and how to navigate some gray space in contracts, in projects, in clients, all that kind of good stuff. So, Dylan and Matt, take it away. Hello, hello, hello.
What's going on, sir?
So you're in a hamster on a wheel.
It has been a crazy day around here as well.
Just a lot going on, man. We've got launching software, pushing hard on that stuff, keeping up with all the content generation that I'm doing, doing the podcast here, plus all the other behind the scenes stuff I do for other people. It's just a lot, man. It's good though. It's really good.
Keeps you busy, right?
That and out of trouble. So
you don't find yourself being bored very often.
I got to make time for boredom,
Right.
Make time to do a whole bunch of nothing. And that's, or what I find too in that same time, and this is what like we run into a lot in engineering firms, like when I was in that space, is you're balls to the wall, and so you don't have time for anything else, and then you're slow and you don't do anything. So like that's just how it works, right? You're just like, oh, I can breathe. And when that happens, there's nothing to improve. There's no like steadiness of stuff to work on. And because there's no urgency, nothing gets done. And it's this, big roller coaster of like, fuck, we just need to get it out the door. And then like, we'll do it tomorrow. Like, that's fine. So it's hard to find like that equal like ground and to take that dead time or even just carving out that like hour a day to read or go to the gym or whatever else when you are like balls to the wall.
Well, and it's a lose-lose, right? Because your cash flow sucks during those times. And if you're not getting cash coming in, and on top of that, you're not getting any productive measures done, you're kind of shit out of luck.
Right. Well, and that's for everybody at the top. But even like as an engineer, you're just like, all right, when's the next project going to come? Like, oh, and then when you do have them, you have 4 deadlines in the same week, or you're like, all right, this is good enough for that client. This will be good enough for that client. Oh shit, I actually need to work on this one. And, to meet all those expectations. And I think it's how it goes wherever. But what I've come to is like, even when you are super busy, it's give everybody their due time, be present when you're there, and carve out that time for you is truly important.
Yeah, without a doubt, man. So what do you want to talk about today? What's on your mind?
Well, I just did like we can leave all this in the podcast too. So this is how it works, guys. This is how the sausage is made.
It is live and uncut.
So I was on I'm part of 2 big masterminds. One is Arte, and those calls, and we covered about doing the right thing and making money helps people yesterday. And then today in my 3.5 hour which is every Thursday marketing call, we go over like, it's so much like deep psychology stuff that I haven't even fully wrapped my brain around yet. But we did like limiting beliefs was the thing that we like talked about today, which everybody has them, unless you're like, I don't know, Tom Cruise or something. That was the example given today. So on a side note, we went to Avatar in IMAX, and one of the previews was Tom Cruise doing his own stunt for the new Mission Impossible movie. They built this huge ramp off a waterfall in like Norway or something, and Cruz was like just kept riding this bike off the edge, and they get their shots with the drone and the him going off the ramp or whatever, and then he opens a parachute, base jumps down, and then they like do it again. I'm like, shit, he's actually doing all of his own stunts. That's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. I mean, he is a rather short dude, so he's got less distance to fall, right?
I mean, still, when you're, I don't know how many feet up this was, but it was like it was the whole thing. So like I'm going through that. I'm uh doing this whole launch for Sheets Made Simple, a new product that we added a bunch of features to. Um, and then, I've really solved some core things for our other software and how that operates. And like, it's how you go to market. And like, I know I talk about marketing a ton, but it's like everything, right? And if you, most everyone else here is operators, right? Like you do your craft really well and you're trying to figure out how to sell the client on the next job or doing the next project with you. And what I've in like the marketing world, so there's really like three segments to it. There's like all the, you know, they call it business opportunity, biz op, but like how to make money online, like all the flashy shit, right? So that's like the Andrew Tates, the Ty Lopez's, the flashy guys. And then there are true like educators, right? That it's really more information, content, all that kind of stuff, which is more like Andy Frisella, Ed Milet, Arte type mentality, right? And information. And then you have like the third group, which is really like you're going to give them hope. You're going to be their savior. This goes in like survival market is really the big one. The world's going to end tomorrow, buy my shit. So like that's how these break down. And we covered this in our call today, but really what I want to talk about in the construction world is it's all about education, man. Like there's nothing, it's not that it's flashy. You can have the shittiest truck in the world. So long as you are the best carpenter, nobody cares. And you don't need, I mean, they care to a point. So like, let me rephrase that. There is some care, but the amount of care is not going to overwhelm your lack of skill, right? If you're a shitty carpenter with a nice truck, no business.
For sure.
Great carpenter, shitty truck, a lot of business. Right? So, and that's like the dichotomy here. So it's to be great at your craft, but to also educate people on why you do the things that you do, why this costs what it does. And more that I think about this, it is the lack of education throughout the market that causes so much strife, anxiety, problems, right? We live and die in like change orders, right? Like on the engineering side, it is death. On the contractor side, it is profit. So like we understand what those words are, right? We understand what change orders are. We understand why they happen. We understand, period. We understand. Where a client has no clue why, like, what do you mean you didn't know about the mold behind the wall? Right? Like, what do you mean you have to tear out my entire floor and ceiling and we have to do abatement? What do you mean there's asbestos? Can't you just breathe that stuff anyway? Like, I hear these commercials, but what does that mean? Like, so it is all education that we do a poor job of truly educating the client on why this happens, what needs to happen next, what are the next three steps. And even before a project starts, like, what a change order is, how the request forms work. Again, we live in this world day in and day out and understand how this stuff happens. Or even if you're new, you're just like, well, shit, I guess I'll figure this out. No one tells me what a change order is because that doesn't happen. So there's no like class and it's like, here's change order school, that's not a thing, right? Here's specification school, just like, hey, read this, follow this guide. We don't know if that project did well or not, but fuck it. Here's, just copy paste, send, like that's the mentality. So, but if you go back and you do this preemptively, proactively to like hey, Mr. Client, in the school world, this was big, where you have these board of supervisors or the superintendent, they haven't built the school like ever, right? And then they're trying to run a school and do their job. Now they have this 50, $100 million construction project. They don't know what's going on. They don't know how to change anything. They don't know again, I keep using change orders because those are always like the shockers to people. They don't know what CDs are. They don't know how to review a set of drawings. They don't know how to, they just don't know, right? They've been an educator their whole lives and now get handed, in nonprofits and a lot of the work that you do, community centers, like those, they're trying to like get people to join their, pickleball club, not like 30 million. I got 30 million bucks. I've never seen this much money in my life, right? What do we do? And so like education becomes a definition of everything because they know what they need, but they don't know how to get there. And so us as architects, engineers, contractors, we have a lot of knowledge and we get pissed at people because we live this day in and day out and we don't understand why people don't know, because we can't remember the time when we didn't know shit about the industry because we have 20, 30 years, or we've just been abused for the last 5 and it feels like 20, right? Whatever your level of competency in the industry is. And so like, even though I'm going through like limiting beliefs in marketing, it comes down to this, like in construction, the core thing, if you were to do one thing that would change your entire business, it would be to educate the market on all the shit that you do, even though you think it's the most basic, the most simple, the like fundamental piece of whatever it is that you do. Most of your clients have no clue, zero, and you will become the thought leader. Now, the crux of this is it's not going to take 90 days. It's going to be like, 2 years for you to see stuff, but that flood, it'll probably take 6 months. You'll get stuff. You might see stuff in 90 days. You'll see a little more in 6 months. You'll see a lot more in a year. And then in 5 years, you'll be like, they just come to me. People just show up at my door.
Yeah, I was going to cut you off and say it's more like a 5-year process, because you have to build that rapport first before you can educate. And you do that by good production. You do that by your brand loyalty. You do that by the results, your name, everything all combines to then allow you to start that education piece, really. And I mean, you're spot on with it. We do that as best we can. We're very explicit in our contract packages. So we will put in, where a lot of guys just throw a AIA document at the client and say, here, sign this. We add tons of exhibits, written narratives of everything we're going to do for this contract. And it helps to educate them on what they're buying. It helps to explain the process. We go really slowly through things like clarifications and exclusions, because those are always big ones. Like you mentioned, mold or, environmental remediation. That's a huge one that people don't account for. I mean, you shouldn't account for it financially, but you have to know that there's always a possibility of, if we dig a hole in the ground or tear down a wall and there's something nasty in there, we can't just get rid of it, quote unquote. There's a process, and that's where the contingency and change orders come in. You did mention a comment that it's change orders are profit for contractors and death for designers. I would kind of push back at that a bit. Yes, we'll put our fee on a change order, but in our world, I would rather have everything figured out as best we can up front and have no damn change orders, because yeah, we get a couple bucks on it, but the paperwork and all of the headache that goes on, especially in commercial, where everything is so heavily documented, it's not a handshake deal, right? There's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of shit that's got to get created just to get you then those couple bucks. So, I get the designer side, you guys, you architects and engineers out there that don't do change order fees. I think that's absurd. You got to build in some amount of hours for revisions and such. But, I wouldn't be, I'm not suggesting this to my architect today, but I wouldn't be, really upset if he called me and said, hey, for this new wall we're putting in the lobby, it's going to take me X number of hours. I need this many dollars to make it happen. I wouldn't
Yeah.
just offer it right away, but I would have the conversation.
Well, it goes to what you talked about earlier, right? Exclusions and inclusions is, on revisions. And because most projects are fixed fee, then you get down to like, well, I don't like that. Well, okay. Yeah. Like there's a weird line in there when it comes to the design side because most things are fixed fee. To where you're designing for a budget, which is a whole other deal, and on your like nobody likes change orders, to be clear on that. um just the A&E side typically never gets paid for anything, like, and it's usually because it's a omission on our part or an error, or you know everybody understands like you found shit that you didn't know. Okay, we can talk about that. It's the like on a new build greenfield project, where you have a change order on something, that's a problem, and it usually comes back to the architect and engineer to like, well, we got to fix it. And the contractor, it wasn't in the bid, they need more money. Okay, got it. That makes sense. It's, renovations are always the outlier on stuff like that. But again, it's most all fixed fee projects. And then like, because nobody understands their contracts, nobody does it because I didn't get a like, and again, this is all just in pure honesty. Like I never had a contract class, like for architect and engineer, even though I'm writing all these contract documents, like and specifications, like here's what you do to like not get sued. Here's what you need to say to like cover your ass. It's just like, this is what we do. And it's worked so far. So when it comes to education, this is all internal and external, like to have those meetings where you go over stuff, to have videos of be like, hey, like we find mold, that's not our problem. Like we'll make it our problem, but you're gonna pay for it, like all that in a nice way. Like I'm being blunt here, but that's a lot of this stuff like happens, and there's a lot of like gray lines in this of like how they gonna take it. And then because you get stuck so much in like, how is this person gonna react to the nature of the problem, that you never address the problem, right? Like you don't talk about the thing. So then it becomes a bigger issue, right? Like just like we didn't find any mold here, like these are not the cockroaches you're looking for.
Well, there's a few things out of that. It comes down to being able to have tough conversations too, and make potentially unpopular decisions. That's part of putting on your big boy pants and running a business. But when you were talking, I was kind of laughing inside because I mentioned our contracts are huge and we put all this documentation in it. Well, we do that with our proposals too. We call it our platform, and our typical proposal might be 30, 40 pages long. And I go back and I look at my proposal from my architect, and it's one sheet, and it's they kind of burn themselves. Like we put in so much documentation to cover ourselves. And yes, in the design build world, especially, we're tip of the spear. We're taking on the risk and handling the funds. But even so, again, I keep doing this double-edged sword shit. Like I don't really want to read a 20-page proposal from my architect, but there should be some better happy medium between the two. But yeah, going back to the omissions and errors part, contractually, yeah, we could probably go after our architect. Let's say they screw something up or they forget something and it costs us money once the project's already underway. We could probably go down that road, but I can't think of a single time we have, because it's really difficult to go and say, all right, and maybe it's just semantics, because we'll do that to our carpenter, right? If the carpenter breaks a pipe, and the plumber has to come and fix the pipe, we'll back charge the carpenter without really thinking about it. But there's this weird omission on our side where we won't go and back charge the architect if he missed a wall, or we have to fire rate a section of the building that we weren't planning on, that wasn't in the drawings. We've never gone back, and maybe we should. Maybe that's kind of promoting the mediocrity in a way, but it's it's also always one of those things in my mind. Like, it's a tough job as an architect, as an engineer. Like, do we really expect you guys to know 1000% of everything in the code and, never be in fault or in error?
So that's a hard one because ultimately, like contractual, like so there's two sides of that, right? So from a contract perspective, you might be able to do that, but ultimately, what the responsibility is, design it to code. And so, like a code thing got missed, or the HJ wants some, you know, unicorns for whatever, because we all know that happens.
They
But
do.
like, so like that's not necessarily a miss. It's just like this guy interprets it differently. But ultimately you're like everybody's getting paid to then put the building to what that HJ wants. So because that's the other side of it. Like it's our job to put out documents to then um price and build to a set of standards. And so if something didn't get fire rated and it's got to go back to like, because for the architect to do that, now note, it might take 3 hours, right? To go back, note, make all the changes, do all the paperwork, whatever, half a day, let's say, to do that. He's just going to eat it within his fee to take that and do it. So like he's already been paid for it. And then everyone else is getting paid on the work to be done and executed, right? Because that's how everyone else gets paid, is on work executed, and the architect and engineer get paid on uh design documents, right? Because they get paid for design whether it's built or not. So, and then there's the whole CA thing, which then you're smart in your contracts as an architect and engineer, you do CA differently, because everybody loses their shirt in CA, for time on site and everything else, which is why I liked government contracts, actually, because you got paid hourly for all CA work. They split the phases out. So like I can see, like, again, you can split that 6 ways a Sunday. And at the end of the day, like, is everybody happy? Did or not super pissed off? You might not be, joyous, but you're like, yeah, we got it done, and everybody's good with it. The building can open and everybody moves on to the next project and nothing falls down, nobody gets hurt. Like that's what everybody wants at the end of the day. So like you could split hairs on it, and then it's like, dude, this is why everybody hates flying Spirit. Let's call this spade a spade. Like, because you get nickel and dime for everything versus like a Southwest where I pay my fee, I get on my plane, I don't pay for bags. Like my charge is my charge. For Spirit, you're like, oh, you want a seat? Okay, that's that. Oh, you want a tray table?
You
Oh,
want
you want to
pretzels
put
with
it
that?
down? You want to put your tray? You want a seat belt? Come on. Like, oh, you want peanuts? That's $12, man. Fuck. All
So
right.
you're young enough that you probably don't remember back when Spirit was actually the shit. Like back when Carrie and I were dating and before we had kids, my wife and I, we flew Spirit all the time back and forth. We'd go to Florida 2 or 3 times a year because we didn't have responsibilities then, and it was, Spirit Airlines was cheap. They didn't charge you for anything, and it was legit. And then something happened, a decade or two ago, that just, they flipped into what you just described, and it's outrageous now.
Yeah. I
But
mean, I flew United as a kid and we got hot meals and like,
right,
I flew cross country because I lived in Virginia to my grandparents every summer. And my dad worked for United at the time. So like we flew standby. So our tickets were like free. The planes were empty. So I flew on 777s and 76, like big bodied airplanes, because we did DC to San Francisco. And so like you got hot meals. I got to, as a kid, lay across the like 5 seats in the middle, like, and I could fit in it, it was great.
yeah, for sure, man. Going back to the designer and the change orders and fees, though, it does depend on contract type on our end. So like we do a lot of GMP work, guaranteed maximum price, where everybody's not getting paid if there's something missed. It depends on what it is, right? We have ways to collect, but it also really then, as long as it's not something huge and outrageous, it goes back to relationships. right? And is it worth the $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever it is that I'm going to try and squeeze out of the architect for his quote unquote wrongdoing? Is it worth the strain on the relationship moving forward? Probably not. And it just, with the specialty contractors, it's a little bit different only because everyone expects it, right? But we do the same thing with that. If my carpenter, if he nicks a pipe and it's a true accident and it's pretty minor, we won't put him on a stake for it either. We'll just cover it and eat it, and it keeps everybody happy. And if it's bigger stuff, yeah, everybody knows that, everybody plays fair, and the dollars are different on the specialty contractor side than with the designer too. It depends on what the situation is.
Well, and I think you nailed it, right? It's expectation. What do you expect to pay out of this, right? So when it comes to value, all that type of stuff, like what do you truly expect to pay? And so, like, I expect to pay a lot of money for a Bugatti. I do not expect to pay a lot of money for a Honda, right? Like, it's just, you don't. And so, like, expectation is everything, right? Like that contractor expects to pay or be paid for whatever they do. The architect and engineer, there's a lot of slop in that, what the expectation is. There's so much gray in, like, we give you building, you build it, it is on you. Like, like I I don't do that to discredit, like, again, I'm an engineer, like, so I live that world. But like, that's really what's expected of us is, like, here's a building, we need everything in it to operate. Nobody, again, this big black box of design world, right? Like, nobody understands. Because, like, I've talked to some contractors even here recently who've been in the industry for like 20 years, and they're like, holy shit, I didn't know you put that much time into, like, design documents and, like, CDs and stuff. They're like, they show up, and I'm like, I mean, yeah, but like, to put a new school together, 300,000 square foot school, it takes 2,000 hours of electrical design work. That's not even counting the other 6 disciplines.
So to that end, I mean, those are legitimate fees too that you guys charge, and you should. And I wanted to quickly touch, because we don't have a ton of time today. I got to get out of here for a call, but I want to talk about illegitimate fees and the bullshit that we also see. Because to the same end of education, owners don't necessarily understand things like utility capitalization charges from townships.
Oh yeah.
So Kate, great example. We're working with a repeat client. He is in the car wash business. Okay. Car washes obviously use and lose a lot of water. So you expect to pay any township a reasonable fee to connect to their water and sewer services, right? You use more than a house. Well, I had a conversation today with a municipality where we're looking, found a great piece of dirt. It's a great location, heavy traffic, from a business model by itself, it's perfect. Well, long story short, this isn't like a massive car wash we're talking about. It's moderate. Okay. It's a few automatic tunnels and then a few self-serve ones. Well, the township where this is in, and I've dealt with this specific township numerous times in my professional career, to the point where I've been in, like, finger pointing, screaming matches with them, but they still talk to me. But anyways, the fees they're going to charge for the fucking REUs equal almost $650,000 on a project that's, let's say, high end, maybe 3.5, 4 million. How do you go and explain that to an owner who isn't expecting it? That's like kicking him in the nuts, right? He has this grand vision, this great plan. He's going to start this new business and make some money and live the American dream. And then you say, oh, by the way, you got to pay almost $750,000 effing dollars just to start. There's no education that can help that, I don't think. But I think it goes to your point. Like, you and I, in our respective trades, and however we're doing this, we got to be professors. We got to be able to teach this shit in a way that because it's twofold, right? If I go to him and say, hey, it's going to be $750,000 and he walks away, now maybe that's me doing my fiduciary duty to my client, but it's also me losing a project potentially. So there's a nuance, right? You got to be able to explain it. You got to be able to help them through it, and maybe find a township that's not so goddamn expensive, but that's
Right.
another story.
Well, it comes down to like, hey, so you're getting extorted. Let's just
It's
call it spade a
it's
spade.
legal extortion. That's exactly what it is.
Let's just call them the mafia, and they own the water. And if you would like access to this thing, you're going to have to pay heavy fines and extortion fees because that's what they do here. Now, if you'd like to go somewhere else, your extortion fee will be a lot less.
But
And
you're still getting extorted no matter where
yeah,
you go.
right. And it's just like, which mob do you want to deal with, the Chicago mob, or do you want to deal with, the Gary, Indiana mob? Like it's the, nobody likes Gary, but so I mean, but it's to do it in a funny way too, like bring some humor and levity to it, like, hey man, this sucks. Like, and just be, I mean, but this is all the honesty of it too, right? Like, this sucks. There's no good way to say this, so I'm gonna add some humor to it and call a spade, but like, you're getting screwed. And would you like to proceed? you know, can you make the math work on your side for
Right.
this to go? Yes or no. And if not, hey, cool, we'll go find somewhere else that's not here, and we'll make the math work for you. So I, everything is in relation. It's in having that, like, what's expected here, what is the value of it, a lot of education. And again, like, this is probably the core problem within the industry, is just a pure lack of knowledge, education, expectations. On the architect and engineer side, we're pretty closed off. We're not open to sharing stuff because we think everything is secret. And that's a problem. But at the same time, like, we could learn a lot from each other in, hey, what do you deal with in, this county, this municipality? What do you think of Bob over at the HJ's office? Or, what do you think of this guy for healthcare review or whatever, right? Like, what's the common consensus around, Tom, Bob, Larry, Sally, doesn't matter. Like, and you figure out how to work and get your projects approved, because everybody has, like, your client already bought the land more than likely, right? There's some instances like what you're doing where nobody's bought land. You don't want to tell people, you don't want to get extorted on your land purchase. Like, got it. But outside, like, once the land has already been dirt purchased, building go up, everything else is open to the public at that point. Like, it's public knowledge, by and large, of what's going there. Like, everything's on record. And so I don't see what we lose in helping each other out through this, other than we keep shooting ourselves in the foot, right? For not sharing industry knowledge around best practices, contracts, like, you know, you you like, for engineers to not protect themselves because they don't want to share it. And in effect, like, okay, if your competitor goes out of business, you can't handle all the work anyway. Like, you literally can't do it. And so why not you all come together on, like, hey, this is a great clause in the contract, this one really sucks, like, we lost a lot of money on that. And I mean, this is me just, when I'm in the firms, you're competitive, you want to get the project, but you each have a different portfolio, you each operate a different way, you each have a different way of doing things. Somebody's going to like this design architect better than that one, and that's just the name of the game on those pieces. But I think there's a lot of room that we can come together on, like, helping to educate the both each other and the industry as a whole. And that's, I kind of went on a rant on education today, but it's the core thing that, I mean, it'll grow your business, it'll help you, you'll feel better about everything, you'll increase your self-worth at the core of it, right? You won't feel as, like, helpless with a lot of this stuff, you won't feel as, like, needy or lost. Like, so when it comes down to it, like, the more educated, because we all know our craft really well. There's a lot of these just outlying pieces that we get blindsided by, and it throws everything off.
Yeah. And it's a little different, I think, on my side of the table, because like you were just saying, an engineer can have his own portfolio or his niche of projects, right? The reality is, and while we have our niche markets that we swim in, the reality is I could really build anything. Doesn't really matter. So we have this weird competitive edge constantly, because especially in the markets we operate in, we're very small by nature. There's a lot of competition, a lot of construction firms around. So we are very, very tight-lipped. But to your point, we've been able to find some firms that we are very friendly with. And there's reason, usually, typically, honestly, it's because we don't compete with them for one reason or another, but we can at least get together and do little masterminds and put our heads together and talk. We share ideas. Sometimes we share projects. There's a lot that can come from that. We've looked at JV opportunities with one firm in particular locally that, 10 years ago, as a younger buck, I would have thought, no way in hell would I partner with another general contractor. But now it's like, well, if they bring something to the table that I don't have, and I bring something to the table they don't have, and then we can tackle this larger project together, why the hell wouldn't you?
Yeah. I mean, you nailed it there. Like it's so dependent, but you got to be open to the opportunity first. You got to be open to sharing. Like, dude, Turner JVs on a ton of shit, and they're a $1 billion company.
Yeah.
McCarthy, like they all partner on stuff, and you learn a lot, and again, there's only so many McCarthys, right? There's only so many Turners. There's only, in engineering firms, most of them are pretty local, right? So like there's a lot of best practices that I did in Indiana that would still apply in Colorado. We're just never going to build in Colorado. Like all of our clients were within 200 miles,
Right.
Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, Kentucky, like, North Carolina, maybe. And so that was the market. And same for the Colorado firms. They're going to do Colorado, Wyoming, maybe Montana, Nebraska, Kansas. Like that's it. So like, maybe North Oklahoma. Like that's your radius. And so there's just a lot more opportunity for it, and there really hasn't been a good forum for a lot of this to share or to do that, and maybe we'll do it at some point, but that's the um benefit of just educating. And there's a lot of stuff you can talk about that's just shit. It's National Electric Code stuff, it's you know code items, it's whatever that come up on a project that you can pretty much freely talk about. I think there's just a lot of fear in sharing information for whatever reason.
Yeah, you can educate and build relationships and share lots without necessarily sharing your trade secrets, right? Without giving away the farm. You just got to
Right.
find that balance.
Yeah, or telling which clients or anything like that.
Right.
So guys, we gotta wrap this one up. But again, thank you all for listening so much. Matt and I really do enjoy coming on and talking about the industry, the ins and outs. Um, we try to bring things each and every week that can really help you guys, can put you to that next level, and ultimately, take what we say and do some thinking on it. How can you implement the pieces that we talk about, the parts that we share, the nuances, and understanding the gray area for your projects, your firm, and the situations that you might be in. So thanks, guys. And Matt, any last words?
Other than my normal share the damn show, just want to, wish everybody a happy new year and hope everybody hit the gates running, sprinting into 2023. It's going to be a fun year around here. I'm looking forward to the show and where it takes us and where how it grows and everything we're doing on in our own businesses too. So stick along for the ride. It's going to be a fun one.
Until next time.